I'll be straight up with you. I am shocked that the Chargers actually did this because this is a team that doesn't make moves like this, but they also don't usually lose games where they're down 42-0 against a team that was coming off a shutout, a division rival nonetheless. While the Chargers are imploding on the field, turning down tackles, getting blown out. You're seeing Mark Davis laugh it up with an absurd amount of water bottles in front of him, and you're hearing Antonio Pierce come out of the locker room second half and saying, we're not going to let up. We're not going to let off the gas pedal. And I think he was probably going for the 70 burger last night. He was ready to just keep hitting hit it again, sort of Hans Gruber style, just to make a point. Certainly to his own team, and certainly to his own situation where he's an interim head coach trying to make points with the boss and the fan base by saying, these guys are playing for me. Look how we're playing coming off of a 3-0 home loss. And look how that team is playing, the team that we're trying to beat every single year, the team that we beat on this field 2 years ago in the final game of a regular season, one of the many moments in Brandon Staley's career as the Charger head coach where Charger fans felt completely let down. And I think Antonio Pierce is making a point to his boss to say, look at what I'm doing. And then, again, I thought the Chargers were a team that would just let this thing play out. It's not as if any of the interim head coaches that they're putting out there have a shot at the job. They fired their general manager as well, which means they're clearing the deck. And I'll get to that in a second. But in terms of Brandon Staley, and the fact that his last game had Easton Stick getting eviscerated by Max Crosby and that Raiders defense, and his defense that he stepped to the podium 2 weeks ago, and uncharacteristically, I think he was beginning to feel the heat with the media, saying to the members of the media, I'm the one calling the defense. You don't have to ask me these questions anymore if I'm giving up the play calling. And that team was turning down opportunities to tackle Brandon Bolden in front of a national television streaming audience. It didn't bode very well for him. And the Chargers made this move. And two things. One, I think the Brandon Staley, the tombstone, if you will, on the Brandon Staley era of the Los Angeles Chargers is, here lies someone who couldn't get past a fourth down decision successfully. That's pretty verbose, but here the fourth downs were always cropping up for Brandon Staley. And as I said on Twitter and reiterated earlier this week, coming off of their loss to Denver last week, that I can't remember a team that has had more problems in terms of decision-making, execution, and play calling on fourth downs in my 20 years with NFL Network, quite like the Brandon Staley Chargers. The analytics would say, go for it. He would go for it. And then the execution was terrible, or the play calling was off. And the analytics said, don't go for it. He would go for it. And then something would backfire on him. And then those three moments that he'll be remembered for, two of them in Las Vegas, one of them in Jacksonville. Last night's game in Las Vegas being that 63-point destruction, 63-21 or whatever the heck the final score was. And then that was game 256, the last game of the 2001 season, where the winner goes on, loser goes home, and he lost to an interim head coach in that game too. Two losses in Las Vegas against interim Raider head coaches. And one of them cost him a playoff spot, and one of them cost him a job that, quite frankly, I thought he was going to lose after that third game that will always stand out, the playoff game, the lone playoff appearance in the Brandon Staley era in Jacksonville, up 27-0, losing that game. And to me, I thought that, not last night, that we all thought it on the show. Absolutely. That was the referendum the Chargers players were giving on the head coach. Now, many of the Chargers last night saying we were playing hard for him, and you got to look in a mirror and all that sort of stuff. But the results belie that, and some of the play belies that. And we all thought, how do you bring back a guy that just lost 27 a game that they were up 27 points in a playoff game, and they did it, and didn't go with Sean Payton. Instead, Sean Payton is the guy who's now in Denver, and that team is on a playoff run and knocked Justin Herbert out for the season, which laid the groundwork for Brandon Staley to lose his job. So maybe, just maybe, that was what caused Dean Spanos to finally pull the trigger here after watching the Raiders destroy his team in front of a national television audience in an embarrassing fashion. And here we are with the Chargers job open.
Rich, my thought on that was I covered the team 23 years ago for Fox Sports, and 23 years ago, the Spanos family was making questionable decisions. And my biggest thought is there are very few things that owners like less than getting embarrassed. And they were embarrassed. And I don't know how they could have kept him on after today. It would have seemed almost like a capitulation or a reluctance to admit that they'd made a mistake. I feel like they had no choice but to let them go.
Well, I just thought, again, a team that didn't want to open their wallet for Sean Payton is what I believe would not want to pay somebody to not coach for 3 games and then have an interim head coach there that they have no intention of hiring anyway. But that's what they decided to do, Suze, because I think you're right. And I think the guys in studio, we were texting at the same time about maybe even getting fired at halftime, which is what Richard Sherman said during the halftime show of Amazon Prime.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.